the MRCs of this world, the UCTs, and other institutions in other provinces. So that would be a work in progress, which we will share with the committee at an appropriate time. But let me hand over to Dr. Mope to then do the presentation. Chair, again, thank you very much.
Thanks, DG, for the background, and good morning, honorable members. I've also got the team that I work with who have joined me. Is Mr. Ben Durham, who's the Chief Director for Bioinnovation, and Ms. Glodina Luos, who is the Manager or Director responsible for health innovation. So I see that I'm disabled in terms of the presentation, so I don't know if there's somebody who's going to be projecting on my behalf.
I think we can give you sharing rights.
Okay, thanks, person.
Sorry, it should be open now. Just try again.
Okay, yes, I think it's now open. I'm just going to the start of the presentation. Yeah, so I'm just going to go straight to to the second slide. Okay, yeah. So basically the health investments are on the basis of the bioeconomy strategy, which has got 3 thematic chapters. So we today are going to be presenting one of the 3. There is another one which I think on more than one occasion we have done a presentation to the portfolio committee on, which is that of indigenous knowledge system. But the 3 are health, agriculture, industry, and environment. And we have IKS as a cross-cutting one because it has got aspects of everything: health, agriculture, and also industry and environment. So this then becomes our 4th theme, which looks at indigenous knowledge system. But today the focus is on the second bullet, which is the health part. In terms of what we're trying to do there, is that we basically on the whole bioeconomy try to implement strategic innovation programs with emphasis on various priority areas of government. And as you have indicated, what we do is that depending on where or which is the line department that is responsible, a whole lot of our work would therefore align with that particular work. So in the instance of health, when we set priorities in the area of health research, that particular work is done together with the Department of Health. Then we build strategic innovation competencies. And what is important is that when you do this kind of work, it is important to build human capacity. It is important to have platforms. These would be your kind of scaffolding on the basis of which all the work can actually be hinged on in order for it to grow. And then what is also crucial is to make sure that we manage the IP that is generated there, so that out of it we can generate entrepreneurial activities and have pilot scale facilities that are normally used. And we see that a lot in the area of health, but there are a whole lot of other pilot scale facilities in the area of industrial bio that we deal with. And of course, the issue of clinical trials resources, we'll talk more about it when we go on with the presentation. It is also important to make sure that there is coordination on the work that we do, not only within the department, but also with other government departments. Because ultimately, when you got line departments such as health and agriculture that we work with, then there is also at the highest level issues around trade and industry. And that is really where, again, we link up with other government departments like trade, industry, small business development, and so on and so forth. So within the bioeconomy, when we talk about health innovation, we're looking at strengthening the country's local research, development, and innovation capabilities. And we have, from the beginning, identified the area of manufacturing of active pharmaceutical ingredients and vaccines, biopharmaceutical and diagnostics and medical devices as being central, because that way you are able to deal with the kind of the burden of disease that we are managing as a country. So in terms of the main pillars, we're looking at development of new or improved therapeutics and drug delivery systems, new vaccines and other biologicals, new and improved diagnostics, medical devices, human health, behavior, and environmental determinants. So we know the aspect that sometimes get quite ignored is that of human health behavior. But we have seen that a whole lot of the challenges that we sit with are also very much linked to human behavior. So there is a number of cross-cutters, one being ICTs. So we have seen that in this day when we talk about the fourth industrial revolution, a lot of the solutions are actually embedded within ICTs. There is a need to manage the knowledge, whether you talk about IP and sharing of information and what we call know-how. And then this aspect of modeling and advanced statistical analysis. And this particular aspect are quite crucial when you deal with the matters of diagnostics. Like now when we deal with issues of genomics and all sorts of surveillance around COVID, we see that the role of modeling and advanced statistical analysis is quite crucial. And those becomes aspects or elements of the research programs that we support. So these are the main areas in terms of the burden of disease in South Africa. We've got maternal and child health. We've got non-communicable diseases, communicable diseases, whether you talk about HIV, TB, SARS-CoV-2, and one area that has really become quite a huge problem, and we think that if the world doesn't wake up to really deal with this, is the area of anti-microbial drug resistance. So we really are needing to work hard to make sure that, for example, we don't have a situation where populations globally are becoming resistant to the available drugs, etc., including what we are beginning to see with antibiotics. Then there is another area of violence and injuries. Of course, we don't have programs in that particular one. It's really being dealt with primarily elsewhere. So there are a number of things that inform our research and investment in health. One is that South Africa is the largest market in the world for HIV drugs. And hence, as we started, one of the things that we wanted to do is we needed to look at developing our own drugs and also manufacturing some of them locally. And the reason is that if you are such a big market of HIV drugs like we do, it becomes very dangerous, therefore, to rely on imports, because when such is cut off, you ultimately then risk dragging your populations into drug resistance and beginning to have to rework a new regime of treatment altogether. We've got a well-developed generics industry as a country, and I think this is really one area that we have found is very easy to build on. Flora and unique microorganisms that offer largely untapped source of therapeutics and production platforms. And this is quite important because being one of the most biodiverse country in the world, that biodiversity is not only limited to our plants and animals, but it is also including our microorganisms. And those will need to be exploited to find newer solutions in terms of health. And indeed, a whole lot of work is going on in that regard. A genetically diverse population which can be leveraged to provide new treatments, whether you're talking about treatment for diseases such as cancer, etc. It is quite important to note that when drugs are developed and tested, their global effectivity is very much reliant on the population on the basis of which it was developed. So our society, which is so genetically diverse, becomes a very good platform for development of effective drugs and medicines. Our local biodiversity and indigenous knowledge system, we know that we are one of the very biodiverse countries in the world, and our biodiversity also includes plants that are a good source of nutrients, a good source of medicines, and also a whole lot of other therapeutics. We also have world-class clinical sciences, research and regulatory framework, which really provide opportunity for global competitive clinical involvement. And in this regard, you would know that even as we talk about COVID-19, there are a number of vaccines that were actually clinical tried here, and they were actually, as they say, follow the money. They were here following the scientists and the facilities that we have invested on over the years. And again, the same point, we do have world-class researchers in basic sciences, drug diagnostics, discovery, and therapeutic delivery systems. We also have significant historical and new investment in vaccine production, as the DG has indicated. And also, we are a country that over the years have built strategic international partnerships with countries and organizations, which could be leveraged. And as we see, I've mentioned about the issue of the various vaccines development, but we will also see that because of the nature of health research, a lot of blocks are formed around partnerships, because you want to provide solutions that are actually going to be globally relevant, but also, again, considering a local context. So again, this is just to try and summarize the drivers. We know that patients have become very much aware of their rights and also of the choice that they have. And as a result of that, we need to be able to provide them with effective choices and also make sure that they actually get the treatment that they deserve as human beings. The issue of convergence of technologies, really appreciating that health is just one of the aspects, but it is driven by a whole range of other sciences, whether it is nanotechnologies, bioinformatics, ICTs, and even the fusing of various machinery and human genetics, especially when you begin to deal with matters of diagnostics and medical equipment. The digitization of healthcare, we know this is a big thing. Today, even when we talk about the kind of announcements that we make on a daily basis relating to update on COVID, those are based on how some of the services have been digitized, also including diagnostics and the management of even patients' information. The rapid evolution of science and medicine, we know that sciences have evolved over the years, and as a result of that, our investment in health and health programs needs to also make sure that South Africa isn't left behind. And this is really just why it is important for us to look at the convergence of technologies to drive innovation. One, they enable us to really develop more cost-effective solutions. It enables that new healthcare systems that are developed are actually more enabling, and they also help us to manage the risk. It makes diagnostics to be much more to the point and more specialized and effective, because rather than people having to go and consult so many times before certain diagnostics are confirmed, with the convergence of these technologies, some of the diagnostics that will take ages can now be done within a much shorter period. There is also an impact of remote monitoring, which we have been able to do. And for example, even as we talk about diagnostics, which we'll highlight later, or just surveillance of disease such as COVID, we are making use of some of the programs that are emerging globally, but those that probably have also been known but were not used as much as we do. For example, like our utility of wastewater in picking up the uptick of COVID cases before they actually are realized through PCR technologies. So we therefore have, even in terms of the decadal plans that have been presented here previously, that the work of the health investment is looking more at the new treatment and prevention technologies, digital health, and precision medicine. And as I said, precision medicine is quite useful in the sense that when we look, for example, at the challenges that we sit with, whether you talk about breast cancers, etc., we have found that predominantly the drugs that have been developed abroad, which have not been tested on or clinical trial on the diverse genomes that we have, are not as effective. And hence, when we become part of the global development of drugs, we make sure that the involvement or the utility or the usage of our genome actually helps us develop targeted solutions. And this is really where the precision aspect comes in. So genomics is fundamental and is a continuous growing base for medicines and treatment of diseases now and for the future. So we also have a number of platforms, and the platforms are normally programs that support the basic work. For example, like genomics. Genomics itself is a platform that supports a whole lot of things. It is useful in us seeing the kind of variants that are developing. It's useful in us developing and ensuring that the drugs and the medicines are effective. For example, when we want to see that the new variants are responsive to vaccines or not, the genomics work becomes very crucial. We also have platforms that are dealing with active pharmaceutical ingredients, diplomics, metabolomics, the nano platforms, the medical devices, bioprocessing platforms, the nuclear medicine platforms. So all these platforms by themselves, they can be considered probably not as useful, but without them, the bulk of the progress that we have made, including the fact that now we host the hub for the mRNA technology transfer for COVID vaccines, that wouldn't have happened if we don't have strong platforms that can be used either to test the validity and also the standards and all sorts of things. So that is really why we continue to invest on this, and the bulk of them are situated at the Technology Innovation Agency. We've got a number of implementing instruments, the Strategic Health Innovation Partnership, which is situated at the MRC, and then we've got Active Pharmaceutical Ingredient Cluster at the Technology Innovation Agency, and also the Medical Devices and Diagnostics at the Technology Innovation Agencies. These entities are the ones that are driving the bulk of our health research. And of course, they partner with our higher education institutions and other science councils such as the CSIR. So in terms of how we drive health innovation, especially through the SHIP initiatives, one is that we identify the areas of needs in South Africa in terms of health. And then there are project selections. These are really mainly based on the research for, requests for applications where people apply, and the applications are all aligned with the prioritization of the diseases in South Africa. We say this, the disease burdens. Now we need to make sure that the proposals are looking at this. That is really why over the past couple of years, we have already started to move from only focusing on communicable diseases to bring on board the non-communicable diseases, which are becoming a big problem for South Africa and the whole range of other developing countries. Then the work grows into product development, product testing, market preparation, and commercialization. That is why as we go on, we'll also update you on some of the spin-out companies that are actually coming out of this work, and also beyond the spin-out companies, also the technologies that are being used now, not only in South Africa, but some in SADC and other growing into other low and middle income countries. So the focus of the work is HIV and AIDS, tuberculosis, non-communicable diseases. We also have mother to childhood health challenges, antimicrobial resistance work, malaria, COVID-19, And this is also to say, on each one of them, where do we focus? We're looking at treatment, diagnostics, prevention, digital health, and precision medicine. This is what I've already presented in terms of what the focus is on. So I'll skip this slide. And in terms of what has been invested at this particular program in SHIP, already over the 10-year period, let me say, because we're almost in 2012, in 2022, we're almost in 2022. We have a total of R1 billion that has been invested, over 500 million of that coming from the department. We have over 140 million coming from the Medical Research Council, and additional funds that have been leveraged on the base of our investment. So this means that whatever funds that we put forward, there is another attracted allocation that comes from all sorts of partners, whether it is the Newton Fund, the Innovate UK Path, the Gates Foundation, Grand Challenges Africa, and all sorts of other sources. So it therefore is important to note that there has really been value for money in terms of the work and attracting other areas. So we have had a number of achievements in this area. Firstly, growing the capacity, human capacity. On an annual basis, we've got an average of 30 to 45 postgraduates that are supported here, and generation 2025 per annum in terms of new knowledge. We also have developed the technologies that are used for women in terms of, I forgot the actual name of this, Glodina will help me out on it, but it is mainly a tampon kind of an innovation or technology that is being used to manage the hemorrhage in women, which is quite a problem that we have seen. It has been a source of a lot of death and pre and postnatal death as well in South Africa. The novel BNABs discovered, including the CAP2, and these are really quite useful developments in the sense that we are now looking at the solutions for HIV and AIDS, looking at these broad neutralizing antibodies that has been discovered here. And we are hoping, there has been a number of announcements that have been made around such developments in terms of them having been in clinical development and reaching commercial stage. We have co-funded the transition to scale study of HIV Smart and HIV self-testing solutions. We know that there's a lot of issues around HIV testing, some people feeling that it's better if they have the power in their own hands to do this, because sometimes of the attachment of some of these things where people feel that they don't want to be exposed to ridicule when they go out to do this in open places. Co-funding of clinical development of pediatric formulations of levofloxacin. And this is quite important because the issue of formulation in itself, in some instances, it does contribute very useful know-how in terms of intellectual property. But just making sure that the formulation is correct is a life-saving issue in itself. So this is really quite a good value for the work that we have done. We have also had proof of concept for production of functional monoclonal antibodies in plants. And this is really quite important work as well. It has really put us on the map in terms of what South Africa can do in the development of plant-based remedies, including vaccines. Scaling and commercialization of drug resistance testing of excess type HIV and TB, and as well as COVID. And this is really quite important because it is linked to a project that is quite close to getting commercial as well. Humanized mouse and sheep challenge models, localized development of breast cancer tests, and this is quite important again with the growing problem that we have on in breast cancer. If women are empowered to be able to really do this testing and know well in advance, it then makes it important for them and easier for them to be able to take the necessary measures earlier on. New companies established, these companies are listed there. A pipeline of near market projects, we've got quite a number of them. We've got, for example, one of the spin-out companies, which was also a company that has come out from the research from the department called Cape Bio. Last month, they had their own locally produced COVID test kit approved by our SAPRA, which I think we're very proud of as a country, because when we started last year, one of the projects that we have funded as part of COVID response was to fund the development of local diagnostics. And we are pleased to say that with Cape Bio and another one that was announced, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, we now have local developed testing kits for COVID. So I'm not going to go through the project, so let me skip this slide. They are just indicating what kind of projects we have in terms of drug development and which drugs have we developed and at what stage are they. For example, the developments around drugs for malaria, diagnostics, we have mentioned about some of the kits that have now been approved by SAPRA. Vaccines, a lot of work that have been done now, which is why even as we are now establishing the mRNA Tech Transfer Hub, we are really building this on the capabilities around vaccines, even though some of the vaccines that we've been working on haven't been successful, like the HIV vaccine, but the kind of work and the science and the quality of scientists that we have in that area is helping us build on that. Issues of devices and platforms, and it is quite important to know that health, beyond just the vaccines and the drugs, these have got, there are devices that are used that are also quite important, the bulk of which are imported. And it is important that we actually begin to grow this. And there's a vibrant sector that, if supported, it can actually be very good for our own economy. This is really just to refer on the breast cancer diagnostics that I've mentioned earlier. So it is becoming one of the leading causes for African women. And you know that late detection really poses already a major challenge. So having technologies that can help early detection is quite crucial. And this is again one of the startup companies who I've mentioned the company, so I will not go into the details. So DG has mentioned that we also are looking at the issue of transformation. And what we started doing in the last phase of the strategy of the department was to identify, especially the young Black scientists from all over the country, especially from the historically disadvantaged institutions, who we could actually map or develop into being project researcher or main investigators in research. And what we have done is to link them with especially those who are well and trained and have got a lot of experience, which are predominantly your white and in most instances also male scientists, and to begin to really establish this kind of training arrangement where it's either about supervision or core project leadership. So that is really where you got the investigators in research that are jointly funded to do this kind of work. We've also made seed funding available for young women and Black scientists, innovators in various areas, so that when they are coming up with their work, they don't have to struggle in terms of finding financial support. And we have also, again, through this program, identified a number of universities. For example, we've got programs that are running now between the MRC and the Walter Sisulu universities, Sifaho Magatu universities, universities of Limpopo, and students moving from all these universities and some of them now being working from the MRC in Cape Town. And as a result of this, we are beginning to see these numbers and the demographics changing, and we will see the slide as we present later on how this has changed. We have we're also pleased that some of the innovations and technologies that have been developed in these areas are actually targeting the marginalized communities. We, for example, with the ambiflow technologies and the UBT, which I've mentioned earlier on, which deals with the issue of hemorrhaging. These are technologies that are helping those who hardly have access to quality healthcare, either being in rural or in poorer areas. And these have actually found an opportunity to grow into the Africa, through the African Union in partnership with Africa CDC and to the BRICS and also to other BRICS continent and to SADC. And the reason why this is important is because our locally developed technologies are beginning to provide solutions to those who would otherwise not have solutions. And the ambiflow, for example, is very crucial in making sure that the birth and that were actually leading to a whole lot of death before for children are now averted, because you are able to pick up the flow in the umbilical cord of the blood from the mother to the child, and therefore if there is any sign of stress in advance, you can then make references and deal with the problem. The partnership that we have, which also is quite crucial in capacity development, for example, the partnership we have with Novartis, looking at the program Malaria Vaccines program is quite crucial. And here, for example, I've indicated some of the universities that we're partnering with. And in this particular instance, Walter University and University of Zululand, Fort Hare as well. And we find that these particular programs have a great target of bringing on board, especially young and Black women who are doing research and empowering them with tools of trade. This is really how we have been. At 2018, 2020, we have really grown from a very low base in terms of the Black African researchers' participation and postgraduate students. And here, this is really looking at postgraduate students. And we are now seeing this growth in terms of these demographics, which is quite encouraging. Of course, we would really like to still grow, especially the colored participation in this regard, because it's really not been growing at the level that we have wanted it to go. So we continue to work with that. Global Health Innovation Research Accelerator, here the PATH partnerships, where we secure funding globally to support our work. And the good thing about our investment, which is why it was important for us to continue to invest, is that because we put our own investment first to attract other investment, it keeps the research focus firmly entrenched on the priorities that are relevant to us. So you therefore find that the research that is being done in South Africa is relevant for South Africa and for the rest of the continent. So this is really because it is actually investments, even though they are coming from abroad, that are following our own investment. The hosting of the medical device and diagnostic innovation cluster is quite important for us because it helps us to create an integrated and cohesive ecosystem. So we, for example, when we talk about vaccines, we need to be able to know that when we have vaccines, you are going to be able to have all sorts of needles and other facilities that are actually going, which is why we were quite pleased about the program that we ran last year that led to the development of locally developed ventilators. So when you begin to move into that space, you are therefore able to develop equipment and devices that are relevant to your own situation. This is the UBT. I had forgotten the long name when I presented in the previous slide, the uterine balloon tamponade, which is quite crucial, as I indicated previously. And this is really helping our previously disadvantaged communities in terms of making sure that they have access to quality healthcare. Ambiflow, I think we have presented on it on a number of occasions, and the fact that it is now becoming a global innovation that is being used. In terms of COVID research, we have done a lot of COVID work. We have presented on this previously, and I think even on the DG's presentation last week, we have indicated what number of programs have we invested in: diagnostics, therapeutics, vaccines, and surveillance. And really on our surveillance work, we are quite pleased that even today, as we talk about the beginning of the peak of the fourth wave, for example, using our wastewater treatment where we do sampling on sewages, we are able to at least 2 weeks before the uptick predict that and provide the information. And the uptick that has been seen, for example, here in Tshwane, already about 2 weeks ago, we were getting this data from our scientists and sending warnings from various authorities to say, this is what we're seeing in terms of the potential uptick in Tshwane and in other parts of Johannesburg. And hence, when this week we started to see the uptick in the actual testing in PCR, we already had this data coming from various wastewater sampling. This project is well distributed in provinces, in other provinces. We got, for example, in Limpopo, the work is being done by University of Venda, and around here, the Medical Research Council and Sefako Mahato University. Eastern Cape, we've got Nelson Mandela, and then Western Cape, of course, the MRC. So we've really got a lot of capacities that is being developed throughout to be able to do this kind of work. And I'm pleased that this has really been enabled by the reprioritization of about 70 million rand of our budget to support the COVID work. So in addition to that, of course, we participate in a number of working groups as the department that deals with the work of COVID, and with the leadership of the DG, the issue around the development of vaccine manufacturing capabilities, the role in the IMC. So we can say that the investment that we are making in health is actually also making a huge difference in our country. The hierarchies, I think this slide is probably being repeated in terms of what we have done through the system of really taking the complexity out of sequencing of data. And again, the fact that this is reaching commercialization is quite a huge boost for our investments. The work that is being done at CRISP, and much as there is a lot of alarm around the discovery of the new variant, which was announced yesterday. Okay, my sense at least is that this particular variant is more widespread than it is actually thought. And even those countries that today are waking up and making announcement about banning flights and stuff like that, I can bet my last penny they already have this particular variant circulating in their systems. But we are able to pick this up because we really have a very active sequencing program in our country. So I'm quite confident that as long as other countries start to really up their game in terms of surveillance, they will pick up a whole range of some of these variants which are only thought to be coming from here. So we pride ourselves in this kind of work that we do because it is important for us to do it, and it's the responsible thing to do. And this is being done through the network of genomic surveillance in South Africa, which is distributed in a whole range of areas, KZN, Western Cape, Gauteng, and we are, again, the network is actually one that is hugely supported and funded by our work in the department. In terms of vaccine manufacturing, and this is really coming closer to an end, the work of the mRNA hub, where we are beginning to develop capacity to manufacture COVID vaccines with a long-term plan, medium to long-term plan of beginning to also manufacture other vaccines using the same technology. For example, we're looking at building on this technology to manufacture HIV vaccines, to manufacture tuberculosis vaccines and other vaccines of disease that are of a problem to not only our country, but to the continent and also to the low and middle income countries. Now, it is important to note that the application for the hosting of the hub, which made us the first mRNA tech transfer hub ever in the world, is the fact that the World Health Organization had seen the capacity that we have built, both in terms of the kind of researchers that we have, the facilities that we have, the programs that we're running, such as those in clinical trials. So there wasn't, especially when you look at the other applications that were sourced from the continent, there wasn't any other countries that would have made sense to be the first host of the mRNA tech transfer hub. And I'm pleased to say that 6 months after the announcement, we have made a lot of progress. We are going to be making some announcement in the next coming 10 days in terms of what has been done to date in the mRNA hub in South Africa, including some of the funding that has already been secured. But most importantly, beyond the equipment that have already been purchased, some of the exciting scientific developments that have started to happen in the hub. So this again, it just bears testimony to the fact that we have invested enough, and it is known that we can be able to move from research and development to manufacturing much quicker than any other country in the continent. These are the key partners that we have in our research work, both private and public, and in the public sector, of course, our main stakeholders, the Department of Health and Department of Trade and Industry, and then the partnerships we have. Some of them are partnerships that have resulted in some of the tech transfer, for example, those we have with Pfizer, with Novartis, and those Sanofi, they have already resulted in some of the tech transfer or the announcement of what is happening now. With Johnson & Johnson, we know the work they're doing in Aspen. So that's basically just to say that, yes, we also have a very strong network. And this kind of ecosystem is the one that globally has been crucial in establishing a sector that is vibrant. In terms of the API cluster, we have got partnerships led by us as the department, involving University of the Northwest, Department of Trade Industry, Health, IDC, and the Medical Research Council. And this again is to make sure that if we are able to manufacture active pharmaceutical ingredient, then the whole issue of dealing with the imports of drugs is going to be quite reduced, and hence we will also reduce our export of jobs to other countries. This is a strategy. I think I'm not going to go into it, but the main thing is to say, beyond us manufacturing locally, our own, we also want to position ourselves as the contract development and manufacturing organization partner of choice, pretty much like what India is for most of the pharmaceutical companies. Because when we do that, we don't only secure our own health, but we also are enabling our economy and to grow and to create employment. So these are really the activities that are done in the cluster, as indicated, very much aligned with other skills development, cluster coordination, looking at government interventions and support, issues around IP regulation, which is quite important, and ultimately making sure that we've got a very strong commercialization platform of our products. And this is one of the pilot plants that has been jointly funded by public funds, which through the IDC and the Technology Innovation Agency. This was scheduled to be officially launched next week. And these facilities are quite crucial in the sense that they are the first point of call in terms of being able to move from pilot to commercial scale. Also knowing that these pilot facilities are also accredited to develop products that can actually be commercialized. So this is really one of those facilities that there has been public investment on, and it's going to be anchoring a whole lot of our work in this regard. So when the new date is announced or is launched, because of the current situations, I think there are decisions to postpone the launch that was scheduled for next week. Medical devices, I'm not going to say much here beside the fact that yes, there are a lot of key gaps that we have identified in this area, and we find that we can actually move to develop a very strong medical devices industry. Of course, in order for it to grow, you also need to strengthen the regulatory system. And that's really why we're working also with a whole range of other international partners to bring this to fruition. And this is really just to indicate what makes this sector successful, the medical devices one. It's obviously the issue of regulation and accreditation. That's why we've got the partnerships with the Bureau of Standards, the South African Health Products and Regulatory Authority. And we also need to have a very strong research and development platform. And we also are needing to ensure that we've got rapid product development capabilities. So that's basically a summary, a long shot, I think, of really what we are doing in the health sector, and what we are even going to continue to do. As I've indicated, some of that is being migrated into what we're going to do through the decadal plan. I'm going to hand over to you, DG, if you've got anything to add, and we can then deal with whatever questions come through. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Mboneni. I don't have much to add, and we would be happy to take questions. Just for your info, Chair, I may disappear during the Q&A. I've got another important engagement a little after 10, but I'll stay as long as I possibly can. Thank you.
Thank you very much, DG, and thank you very much to Mr. Mofe. Can I note hands from members that seek to engage? And also, DG, kindly note that I think there were some additional slides that had come through. Really implore on colleagues, if they're going to make any amendments to the presentations, that you please do submit the latest presentation to the committee, even if it's in the morning of of the actual meeting. Perhaps maybe colleagues overnight had realized that they want to add some more slides or something. Please do try and ensure that that the updated slides are made available to the committee. Can I ask that we stop sharing the current slide as well?
I'm doing that, Chair.
Okay, thank you so much once again to colleagues from the DSI. I note the hands of Honorable Boshoff, Honorable Mananiso, Honorable King, Honorable Litsie, Honorable Makesi. There's really interest for members to engage on the presentation at hand, and that's definitely a good thing. So I'll hand over to Honorable Boshoff.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I must say this is once again quite an impressive presentation from the DSI, something which motivates one, and it makes me think a little bit about the guy who was pushing his bicycle on a trot, and somebody asked him, but why don't you just get onto your bicycle and ride it? And he says, yes, but I'm too much in a hurry. I don't have time to get on. Now why I use this is that we spend such a lot of money on disability grants and all kinds of different social grants, while this kind of work is going on, which really could propel South Africa into a much better reality, economically spoken, health-wise, and everything. But that is a little bit besides the point and not within our purview at the moment. I just want to ask something very short, and that is, what is the relationship between this work, maybe it is on this second last slide and I just missed it, and the work that is being done at Ondersupport about animals and animal illnesses, because I believe that in terms of genomics and viruses and bacteria and stuff, there's not a great deal of difference between what happens to humans and to other animals. Yeah, so I just wonder, is there some kind of synergy that I maybe miss it? Then I should keep quiet. But thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Boshoff. I'd like to request that as members continue, depending on the strength of your bandwidth, if members could kindly open their their cameras. It's a request from the ICT team so that citizens watching at home can see members and familiarize themselves with their leaders. So when you're about to speak, if your bandwidth allows, please do open your camera. Now note Honorable Khoza.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson, and let me start by welcoming the presentation. As we normally say, every time when we meet with GSI, it's like we are in a lecture room. We get to understand that in South Africa, we've got good story to tell in terms of science, innovation, and technology, and as well ICT. Chair, I want to start by saying that we don't need to leave anyone or anybody behind when we deal with these issues. My interest is more on issues of public participation and as well on awareness, more especially in areas where we know that they are regarded as remote areas. What is it that the department is doing to ensure that they bring everybody to understand what DSI is doing and how can they contribute towards this particular space? However, one have noted that there's 3 sectors that have been identified, namely agriculture, health, and industry, and the environment, where the implementation plans and timeframes published and shared with the public. Was there public or only stakeholder consultations? Has implementation progressed at the pace and scale originally envisaged? What is the status of these implementation plans in terms of their short, medium, and long targets? What are some of the key successes to date? How much has the department invested in each of these 3 sectors to date? How much has the Department of Health invested in health innovation component to date? How much funding has been secured from partners to date? And my last one, Chair, is with regards to their presentation on page 38 on bioeconomy strategies identified. How is monitoring and evaluation structures and coordinated for this strategy? Has a review been done as to what has been achieved to date? If yes, have these results been published? Are the review findings being used to refine the strategy? And as well, lastly, Chair, if not, when will a review be conducted and by whom? Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Mananiso. Honorable King.
Good morning, Chairperson, and good morning, everyone on the panel. I also must agree, I always enjoy listening to the DSI when they present, especially on pharmaceutical matters. So the first question that I have, that in 2009, South Africa's pharmaceutical industry was estimated at 22 billion rand. So I just wanted to find out, did they actually achieve, or how far are they in achieving that at least we get 25% of the current imports slashed? Because if you look at the 2013 report, it basically says that 80 to 90% of our pharmaceutical products are being imported, and they would like to reduce the import and have local manufacturing. So just how far are we? I've heard that we spoke about some local manufacturing, but percentage-wise, what have we achieved so far? And also when it comes to the manufacturing of local products, we have the innovation cluster, which was instrumental to ensure that South Africa is being viewed. So how effective will the innovation cluster be to ensure that we are being seen as a pharmaceutical friendly or investor friendly country going forward? Then a few years ago, not a few years, 2 years ago, I actually asked about the state-owned pharmaceutical company, and the answer that was given to us that it was just there in name. It has not been in any operation as of yet. So I just wanted to find out the API Technology Innovation Cluster. How does it differ from the state-owned one, which is still existing in name only, and how will that then enhance our capacity for research and innovation? When we look at the health cluster, so far, how much have we actually spent on research and development in terms of the health innovation sector? Because we know we're not actually reaching 1% overall for DSI for research and development, but only in the health sector. How much have we been spending in that regard? Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable King. Honorable Itziye.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are.
No, thank you very much, Chair. I think let's welcome the presentation from the department led by both the DG and Dr. Mofe, and the work, the good work that they normally do, Chair. I had a little bit of a problem of network earlier on. Should you experience anything that side, please let me know so that I can switch off my video. I'm switching it on based on the request that you've made, Chair, that we make our videos open. I think, Chair, the department has done extremely well, I think, in identifying or in utilizing the small resources that they have, you know, to identify a lot of great things within the sector, and the strategic areas of health innovation that they have provided, that they have prioritized, amongst others, are the development of new and improved therapeutics and drug delivery systems, the development of new and improved vaccines and biologics, the development of new and improved diagnostics, apologies, Chair, amongst others. So this, as we have seen yesterday, the Minister of Health in South Africa would have announced that there is a new variant that has been found in South Africa now. And because of us identifying this new variant, other European countries have shut the door on South African travelers to their countries. I think what I've seen this morning was the UK having given us they've put us on a red list again and banned travelers from South Africa to that side. This is not the first time this thing happened. We found a variant earlier this year, or was it late last year? I can't remember. And that also meant that other countries are closing the doors on us. Obviously, that has a far bigger consequences on the economy of this country in terms of the import and exports. Obviously, the travelers, those who have made arrangements to travel, and you know, it will negatively affect those ones. And I do not want, I can't blame the department, you know, for identifying variants, but I just want to ask, is it is it possible that we are that good that we become the first country to identify these variants, which obviously impact negatively on us? Or is it other countries do have the necessary skills and they do identify these things, but they don't make them public on time? That is one question. But two, have we satisfied ourselves that we are 100% accurate in us identifying this new variant of COVID? Will it not, in a few weeks, maybe 3-4 weeks from now, come out that maybe we made a mistake? It was not necessarily a new variant. And obviously, Chair, maybe in another time we must have a separate meeting, as I have suggested before, that we must have joint committees with other committees, maybe so that they can take us through that, especially the health committee with the minister that side, that maybe how we communicate some of these things must be, we must find a way of communicating them better, because you know, majority of the time when we communicate these things, we communicate them in a manner that, you know, scares a lot of people. I mean, at least they scared me. You know, the communication that comes out scares us, that, you know, this new variant, we're not even sure if vaccines will work. Whilst on the other hand, we're asking people to vaccinate. I think that is a contradiction to a certain extent. Maybe the department, I'm not sure if it falls under their scope, that maybe they can advise, as they've been working with the health department there, that even though we're not sure, maybe for now, let's communicate the message differently instead of scaring our people out there. Two, Dr. Karim, who we all know that was part of the ministerial advisory team, had resigned, I think it's some time ago, and then but he had indicated that we're going to enter into fourth wave. That was, I think, 2-3 months ago, Chair. And that fourth wave will start on the 2nd of December. And it will last about 75 days, I think he said. And now, a few days before the 2nd of December, we're learning that there's a new variant now. I'm not a propaganda person generally, Chairperson, but this kind of things, as they come out, it looks as if these things are pre-planned, at least to an ordinary person out there. And it does not necessarily look good, Chairperson, to an ordinary person out there. They may think that we you know, as others were saying, that we were suspending COVID because there were elections and political parties had to go and campaign and all of that. You know, it's something that was out there, that it will come immediately. Others said it will come on the 2nd of November of the elections. But you know, when these things come, Chair, they add into these things of propagandists who normally have nothing else but, you know, to spread propaganda. And so to the department, when did we know about about this new variant? Did we know about it now, or we knew about it before elections, but we kept it under wraps? You know, I'm asking these things questions, Chair, so that they clarify people out there that these things were not identified long before, and then we kept them under wraps because there was election period in South Africa. On other questions, other members would have covered me, except few. On agriculture, health and industry and the environment, where the implementation plans and timeframes published and shared with the public. This is in the strategy of the department that stated within a decade of implementation, so around 2023-24, they aim to replace up to 25% of direct pharmaceutical imports that in 2009 cost South Africa about 14 billion. So in the three sectors mentioned, the implementation plans and timeframes were they published and shared with the public? Was there public or only stakeholder? Was there public or only stakeholder consultation? As implementation progressed at the pace and scale originally envisaged? What is the status of this implementation plans in terms of their short, medium, and long-term targets? And what are some of the key successes to date as far as that is concerned? Yeah, and I think, Chair, you know, mine is mostly on this thing of the great discovery of the department in terms of discovering this new variant. Can they just clarify us? Because a lot of messages are circulating on social media, people saying this and that. And will they at least concede that how we're communicating these new discoveries sometimes affects us negatively? They scare our people that, you know, it's as if all of these things are pre-planned, you know. Thank you very much, Chairperson. And yeah, good morning to everybody. I forgot to greet good morning to everybody. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Litsie. Honorable Makesi.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning to everyone. And thank you for the presentation. I just want also just to you know, ask questions regarding what Honorable Litsie has just mentioned. I think most what I would like to find out is that the variants that we are discovering, how are they discovered? Are they discovered from a patient who has died or who has been infected by a new variant? Because there's also, you know, the understanding that also, you know, the COVID variants are also found in food. So I would like to find out exactly how did we get the new variant? And also to add on what he's saying, regarding the mRNA technology for the vaccine, there are a lot of skeptics. And the skeptics are not only, you know, ordinary people, it's also the people from the science fraternity who are, you know, not really convinced about this mRNA technology. What is the entity doing to make sure that, you know, information is out there for people to actually have a clear understanding of how does this mRNA technology works on vaccines, and how is it different from the other vaccines that we used, for instance, like for polio, and why? What is bringing this skepticism within this mRNA technology? Because, like, you know, you talk to people you would think that, you know, they would have knowledge about about the different types of technologies, but they also themselves, they are very much skeptical. And the skepticism is not only in South Africa, I think it is global as well. We are seeing that in countries, in the first world countries, like in Italy, in Europe, around Europe, in the US. So clearly, I think we are unable to sort of provide information so that people can be, the fears of people can be allayed. I think there has to be some kind of way of how do we communicate, you know, in terms of this virus, because without doing that, there's a lot of fake news that we are seeing around the world, and that is why people, they are reluctant to take the vaccine. And obviously people are, you know, are dying. And also, you know, this idea that now there's going to be a booster, and the people that have been vaccinated are dying, like, you know, they end up in hospital, are dying. In Israel, we're seeing that in Israel, we're seeing that in the Netherlands, whereby, you know, they're saying that the hospitals are full in Netherlands, and now the COVID patients have been transported to Germany because they don't have beds. So I just want to find out how we're doing with the misinformation, and how are you ensuring that, like, you know, the right information goes out there so that people are aware and have knowledge of what is happening. Okay, and the other thing is that I would like to ask is the pharmaceutical expenditure. I think in 2018, South Africa was basically spending 45 billion rands in importing pharmaceutical, which is the where I think it was patented drugs, and out of that we have about 52.8%. Out of the 45 billion, 52.8% is on generic drugs. That was in 2018. How much are we spending currently for drugs that we are importing, and which is, like, you know, our patent drugs and on generic drugs? Are we keeping tabs on that? And is that value growing? And especially now with the COVID vaccine, has it grown substantially over the years? I just would like to know if you have the figures on that. The other question that I have is you know, with the COVID vaccine, we have seen that, I mean, the government across Africa have asked that, you know, the intellectual property of the COVID vaccine should be shared with Africa, because we have you know, the know-how, and we can actually be able to manufacture our own vaccines. But obviously there's reluctance because, you know, I think countries that have put a lot of money into that kind of research feel like, you know, they have to be able to benefit financially out of that intellectual property. But then I would like to find out, what is it that we're doing? Because even if you are not manufacturing the drug itself, there can be some scope for us as a country to participate in the manufacturing of those kind of vaccine. Like if we talk about maybe looking at the inactive ingredients, which is the excipients, that we can actually be able to participate in that. Is there any intention of doing that, of at least, you know, taking part in on also producing from our side, not necessarily the entire COVID vaccine, but at least to have to participate in the production of inactive ingredients? Is there a scope for that, for us to be able to do that? The other thing is, like, you know, as I said, that, you know, we are spending about 45 billion. I think that's what I saw in 2018 on importing, you know, drugs. But at the same time, we're spending about 1.1 billion in that is being invested on research, specifically on COVID research. Is that, like, you know, an amount that is adequate for us to do what do you call it, research or is there a, you know, a value that you can actually say that, you know, could actually be able to capacitate us enough for us to be able to really be role players in the kind of research that is needed in the production of vaccine. One other thing that I also picked up is the fact that, you know, we're talking about postgraduate students that we have attracted. I think it was about 40, up to 40 postgraduate students. I can understand that, you know, South Africa, maybe that's how I read that, like, you know, we concentrate more on postgraduate students. And there's also, I believe there's also a scope to have people that are not necessarily specialized that can be able to take part in human capacity in terms of manufacturing, not research. And I think that can be a gap that can be filled by private sector. What are we doing to ensure that, like, you know, as a country, I think maybe, I don't know if you are able to answer that, because I think that is more like a political decision, to ensuring that we attract international companies that are role players in the pharmaceutical industry. The reason why I'm saying that, because I remember when I had an opportunity to work in a pharmaceutical company in Ireland, whereby you didn't necessarily, I think it was about 10 years ago, where necessarily you didn't have to have very specialized human capacity, because especially when you talk about manufacturing, because, like, you know, it's usually machineries, and as long as you have the recipe, then, you know, anyone can be able to follow, you know, the kind of recipes that are loaded within your machineries. So the manufacturing in that case can actually allow to have non-specialized human capacity that can basically come into the industry itself. And now, if you look back and look at what Ireland has achieved, at the moment they are number 3 in the world in terms of pharmaceutical technology, which is like, they come a long way. I mean, they started this in the 60s, and what they basically did is that they imported specialized people from abroad, and then they basically brought the non-necessarily specialized human capacity. And now that they've actually developed their capacity now, and they've got very highly skilled. So it was basically in partnership with the private sector, it was in partnership with universities, and also research entities like yourselves, to ensure that, you know, they get themselves into that. Is there a way that, you know, that we can actually maybe look at that model, because that has actually showed that it is possible to actually do that, and you don't necessarily, because in South Africa, most of the time we say, you know, we don't have the right skills, we don't have the right people in the right in this kind of industries. Hence, we are unable to move forward as quick as we can. But is there a way that we can actually look at the Irish model and say, you know, what is it? How did they manage to get to where they are? Because they were not very highly qualified people. I mean, personally, when I was there, they didn't have very highly qualified people that were working in the pharmaceutical industries. But now, you know, they are speaking a different language. You know, they have all the kind of specialized people, because there was an active interest within the government itself to ensure that they're actually injecting enough investment capacity for them to move as quick as they've done. I mean, that was in the 60s. That's when they started into, like, really looking into pharmaceutical companies, like, you know, to say that pharmaceutical industry can actually be able to improve their economy. And now today they are the third, as I said, in the world. And Ireland is a very small country. I mean, I think the last time I checked their population, they had a population of about 2 to 3 million. And they are basically now one of the best in the world when it comes to pharmaceutical. But what is it that we're doing? Are we actually looking at those kind of models to see what is it that we can? Because this is where we are when they started in terms of human capacity. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Makesi, and thank you very much to all members for your questions. can we lower the hands on the chat, please? I think my question, really, one has really been covered by members. So there's not much for me to say, but I'd like to find out in terms of our IKS centers, and I know we've been a bit delayed in terms of setting them up due to COVID, but there was an indication of the fact that that does not limit essentially the capturing of that information, or essentially what those centers are supposed to do. But it would be interesting to find out that what does that traffic look like in terms of information that's coming in, or data that's coming in. What are the numbers looking like? Is it slow? Is it fast? Is it, are people using that space in order for them to get the type of support that we intend on giving them through these centers? And in that, in relation to innovations that speak to health, but even beyond that, are we able to identify, maybe let me just stick to health innovations from these centers and from this information that's supposed to be coming in? Are there a lot of innovations that are being brought forth to the DSI? It would just be an interesting analysis for us to make. But also, I think one really wants to, noted, Honorable King. One also wants to appreciate, like all members have, the information that you've shared with us this morning, and it does always feel like we're in a lecture of some sort, and we continuously learn in this space. I also want to appreciate the emphasis that was made by and large during the presentation on intersectionality and the importance of representation as we do the work that we do. Yeah, so I think I'll just hand over back to Honorable King. She has one last question, and then we'll hand over to the department.
Thank you, Chairperson, for being so kind to allow me to ask this question. I just wanted to find out, I just saw on the strategic plan that you have, that South Africa, you state that South Africa will build its health innovation system using the Quadruple Helix model. If you can just elaborate on this model, and have you been so far been successful in engaging and introducing this type of model? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable King. Can we then hand over to DG and Mr. Moafe? But I think DG said he'll step out, so let me see. Yes, he has already stepped out, so we'll hand it back to you, Mr. Moafe.
Okay, so thanks very much, Chairperson. I'm going to lead the responses, and then I'm going to ask Claudina to come in where I would have left the gaps. And I also need to indicate, I think the first, 2 or 3 slides, we were basically presenting the context of the health innovation investment, because today's meeting was about health innovation investment. But because the health innovation is one of the aspects from the bioeconomy, so we just wanted to present the bioeconomy as such. So there were a couple of questions that related to the bioeconomy in general. Some of them I'll be able to answer, but some I think will need a detailed presentation on themselves. For example, for us, if the chair agrees that sometimes we can just come and present on those 3 pillars. What have we done in agriculture? What have we done in health? What have we done in indigenous knowledge system? What have we done in the industry and environment? Because those are pillars on themselves that will need a kind of presentation that is as detailed as the one we have done now just on health. So today's one was mainly on health. But there are questions that relates to that I'll probably be able to answer. For example, there was a question on whether there has been any public engagement on the strategy and its implementation, and the answer is yes. The strategy, as some members may recall, was approved in 2013, and we have been going through the period of implementation since then. So it was a product of an engagement both with the public and with all the stakeholders. So ultimately, when it was launched as a public as a document that was fully consulted, which is why even on the aspect of the indigenous knowledge system, there was a lot of engagement with what we call the knowledge holders, and this would be people who have done all sorts of things with plants and animals in terms of medicines and food before. So their work was actually used also in strengthening the document. So there has been a lot of consultation. Now, in terms of monitoring takes a number of levels, which I'm going to try and explain. So one is that, of course, on an annual basis, we report on what we have done and what the impact has been. But then at some point, we will have to do an evaluation of the whole strategy. And that evaluation will then tell us, you said you were going to develop vaccine manufacturing capabilities. What have you done? How far have you gone? And just in terms of the progress made in some of the areas pertaining to health in the strategy. For example, let's look at the issue of the vaccine manufacturing. What we had indicated on the vaccine side is that we were going to start with what we call backward integration. So basically, we start by doing the fill and finish. Actually, we started by doing packaging and distribution. And then we said, as we start to do this packaging and distribution, we'll then move backward and start to do fill and finish. And from fill and finish, then we're going to go into manufacturing of active pharmaceutical ingredients. And then from there, also making sure that our R&D work supports that process. Now, I'm pleased to say that through the partnership that we have and the ownership of the shareholding in BioVac, you might be aware that last year there was an announcement of the fact that through the partnership we had with Pfizer, that we're going to locally do the fill and finish of Prevnar 13 vaccine. And 2 years ago, there was an announcement made again through the partnership with another company, the French company, on the manufacturing of the hexazen. So there has been that progress that has been made. On the drug side, we are pleased to inform that for the past 5 or so years now, one of the locally developed drugs on malaria, which was actually the first drug to be developed in the continent, has been on clinical trials, and it has been showing some good signs. So those are some of the successes that we can begin to sample. We have mentioned some companies that have spun out of the work that we funded, whose products have now been accredited by the health authorities for commercialization. And one of the companies owned by 2 young black graduates, the Cape Bio company, and so you are beginning to see those kind of successes. So at some point in terms of monitoring and evaluation, yes, we will do a full-scale evaluation. And when we do this evaluation, or we call them reviews, they then help us to begin to prepare the next strategy. And we can then say, yes, we probably met our targets on this one, or we miss a target here by a whimper. How do we make sure that we actually, in the new strategy, claw back the losses we have had to still achieve our targets? So that is really what we're going to do. And then on the question of the importation and exportation of drugs. Now, the Department of Science and Innovation wouldn't have those figures. We might know some of them. I don't have them off the head, but this is the area where our sister department, the Department of Trade and Industry, can actually advise on how much in terms of imports are we actually paying. And the other issue, of course, is that the decisions on buying of health product is done by the Department of Health, not by the Department of Science and Innovation. So we make sure that whatever innovation that is required for us to be able to do things locally, that is in space. And of course, we don't just stop there. In certain instances, like now when we've got locally developed products, we then engage the Department of Health to say, you need to then buy local instead of still going to import when we can do locally. Then there was the issue of how the API links with Caterpillar. Now, Caterpillar was really going to be a commercialization company, but the API research and development, this is a research and development platform that we have established and are running, and it just helps us to develop both new and improve existing offerings on drugs where we can. So this program, again, is ongoing, and it's one that we are funding as a department. And we hope that out of this, we will be able to develop APIs that will be manufactured locally and sold to other players. The issue of the quadruple helix. So the quadruple helix model is a model that says, when you do your research and development, you need to look out on the ecosystems approach. For example, when we are doing COVID research, we already need to see who are the potential partners. And the quadruple means that you're looking at the 4 pillars, and the 1 pillar being government. So that's why in our presentations, you will see that we have indicated which are the government departments that are involved, 1 pillar, which are the academic partners that are involved, the academic being the 2nd pillar of the quadruple helix. And then who are the industries that are involved, and the industry being the 3rd pillar, because ultimately they're the ones who you're going to work with to commercialize. And of course, then looking broadly at the society, and also the non what do you call it, the non-commercial sector, which could be your foundations and philanthropic organizations. So that helix continues to be part of the core, which is why when you look at our slide and we say partners, you will see that each and every one of those are represented. Now the issue of variance. So I appreciate that there's a lot of theories out there. There's a lot of experts on Facebook and on WhatsApp about the variants and stuff like that. Now, a variant is not something that you can hide. Actually, we couldn't have hidden this thing just for the convenience of us having an election. So by law, we are expected to report these things to the World Health Organization. Now, and of course, before we do that, we then need to engage our own government and say, this is what we have found out. You may recall, and I think one of the things to highlight here is that we've got a very active surveillance program in South Africa, not only for COVID, but for other diseases as well. But I think with the outbreak of COVID, our surveillance program has really been on steroids. Now let's look at the evolution of the various variants since COVID started. There were variants that were first identified in the UK, and yes, of course, the initial work was done here. And it was a variant that was first identified in the UK. We all will recall that we also were very instrumental in the identification of the Delta variant, which originated in India. And yes, it became a variant that even now as we speak, it is the dominant variant globally. Now, answering the question of whether we are getting things right, we've got no shadow of doubt in our minds that we've got the best scientists and the best systems in the world to do that. And that whatever we have done around the work of the variant has been confirmed by the best labs everywhere. So that much, I think, in terms of the quality of the work that is being done here, we can put it aside. Because this work, when you announce these things, other labs globally will also go and run their own independent screening and genomic work, and they will be able to confirm this work. What we wouldn't know, though, until such work is done, and it is being done, is what is the meaning of this variant? Does it mean that we are in trouble or not? And that's a question that we are saying we don't know because we haven't done that. And in order for us to answer that, we then need to look at people who have been vaccinated. How do they respond to this new variant? The vaccines themselves, are they able to neutralize this particular variant or not? And that is only then when we can say, oh, this variant is actually worth worrying about or not. That is why for now, it is classified as a variant of concern. It is not yet classified as any other thing. So it could just be that. And we hope that it could just be that maybe it is not that problematic anyway. Or it could be that it is problematic, which would be very worrying. So that much we'll be able to provide the detail thereof as soon as the information is made available. Now, when was this variant identified? Claudina will help me. I think we got the first report. I got called about, today is Friday. I think it would have been Wednesday or Tuesday evening when I was informed that this is the situation. And when we started, Wednesday, yes, it was Wednesday evening when I got the information. And then our engagement with the scientists was to say, okay, you have picked up this variant, but do whatever needs to be done in the next day so that we can be able to confirm what we have and see what the situation is. And of course, the same day, the colleagues were working on these things, and it did come through towards the morning of Thursday that this is the situation. Hence, yesterday, this time, we were actually just finalizing the briefing to our minister and the Minister of Health before they escalated to the president, and ultimately the announcement being made in the afternoon. It is important that for us to know that in this kind of environment, it is almost impossible to conceal these things. So we wouldn't have hidden this thing for elections. And just to give you a taste of this thing, while we were still trying to manage this so that we can inform our minister and the president, already this thing had leaked to the UK and it was being printed. So we can imagine this is information that we get Wednesday evening. And yesterday morning, we already had articles in the UK about this thing. So can you imagine if we're hiding this since November or since October for the sake of election? It's just impossible. So there was no hiding of anything. Now, do we engineer these waves and the variants? No, we don't do that. The waves would happen. When you've got a pandemic like this, the infections will go up and down. And they go up and down because at some point, they will infect so many people, and then infections will then go down. And then they will go down to almost zero, and at some point they will pick up. So that is why this whole wave phenomenon is happening globally. So we know, for example, that in Europe, there is a fourth wave already, and there is a fourth wave now that is showing it's gonna start here. Unless something is done and we can stop whatever is happening. But what is important to note is that we cannot generate this, but you can always have a sense of the fact that these things are going to happen because of, for example, people behavior. I mean, we have all seen what was happening over the past couple of weeks around the various public events, whether it was about electioneering or some form of parties and stuff like that. And those were events that were quite scary for us because we know that if you have one person who are in that kind of environment who is infected and there are others, the infections will obviously happen. So we try and make sure that we communicate the truth without any intention to scare people. These kind of announcements also worries us. I mean, like, I talk to you now, and for the past 3 days, I have really battled to sleep because one, I need to say, what does this mean to my country? What does it mean to our economy? What does it mean to our health? And ultimately, as a person who's going to be taking this message to the minister and to our DG, you also have a feeling that it's like you are the one who's doing this thing. So it's not something that we enjoy doing, but we have to do it. So I hope that it answered the question of whether there is some form of conspiracies or not, or whether there's, so these things are happening, we can't hide it. What I am personally worried about is that I don't think that many countries are as vigorous as we are in terms of surveillance. I mean, I've indicated earlier on that part of our surveillance, for example, we start doing this at sewage work, and there are samplings that are being done on a weekly basis. And these we like because they tell us of the outbreaks before they happen, because even before you have symptoms, already if you've got viruses, when you go to relieve yourself, some viral material will actually be released in that process. And you can easily sample that at this thing. And we know that more than 10 days ago or 14 days ago, we already were seeing the signs through the sewage systems that there is a pickup in Gauteng and specifically in Tshwane. So that data we were able to share with our other colleagues who are doing other form of surveillance. Now, the question of how the variants are discovered. So I have indicated that when we do a lot, when samplings are happening, whether it's in the sewage or whether people go and test. When you go and test, you give away a sample. And for that sample to register positive or negative, its DNA has to be sequenced. And when the DNA is sequenced and is compared with the standard, which is that of a particular vaccine, a virus, when it matches, then you are positive. Now, what we do is also to make sure that when the sequencing is done, one is also able to check whether there are specific changes on the DNA of that particular virus and what those changes mean. So the work of detection of variants is a continuous work that we do. And by the way, it's important to also know that variants or mutations are taking place. Even as I'm speaking to you now, there are mutations that are happening on this virus. Some of them are minor, some are major, some are neutral. Maybe this one is also neutral, but we don't know yet. And the way we classify them either as being neutral is that it's those kind of mutation that when they happen, they are not going to have any impact on the behavior of the virus. So you might find that it doesn't become highly infectious or otherwise, but it just continues the way it has, like the original one. And then some are negative in the sense that they may result in a worse virus, which will be creating more problems. And maybe you also are lucky and you've got some that are positive that the virus mutate itself out of existence. So we really need so that issue of how the variants are picked up is that yes, you've got to run these sequences to be able to pick up where the mutations are. On the issue of the mRNA technology hub and the information, I just think that what we're sitting with globally is that there are very powerful anti-vaxxers who, regardless of which technology of vaccine is being used, they are just against the COVID vaccines. And some of them have got religious backgrounds, some of them just have got other form of backgrounds, and some is about political positions, etc. But there are a number of vaccine technologies that are in play. Some of them you just use a deactivated virus. So basically, it's the same virus, but in a form that is not infective, and then you construct a vaccine. And some use the mRNA technology, and even on the ones that are in the market now, they are all not on the base of the same technology. So, in our sense, is much as you might try to clarify that, I don't see how you can make a lay person, understand how the mRNA works or how the DNA works. But what we just need to explain is the fact that this thing about the fact that the vaccine will change your DNA or whatever, it just is not the case. The vaccination drive and this technology is as old as you can think about. I mean, from the time that we get vaccination on polio, etc., some of the technologies are still the same, even for COVID. But the mRNA technology has been under development for many years, but it just has never been successful on any of the previous diseases. It has been successful on this one. So we will try to have all sorts of community engagements about the vaccines and how they work and what they don't do. But I think it is really quite a new challenge that we appreciate. But the technology itself has got scientifically nothing that we can say is destructive. The issue of vaccinated people that are dying, so far we don't have any evidence of people dying en masse who are vaccinated. What we need to also appreciate is that the vaccines are there to minimize risk of dying and hospitalization as much as it is possible. So it doesn't mean that when people are vaccinated, they aren't going to die. Just like for any diseases. I mean, people will get treatment or drugs or medicine for whatever disease they have. The bulk of them may not die, but it doesn't mean that everybody's not going to die. So people are still going to die, some of COVID only, but some because they've got COVID and they've got other comorbidities. But what we are seeing globally, even with the rising infections and the situation with the fourth wave globally, the data that we have so far, and I want to underline so far, is that people who have been vaccinated aren't getting hospitalized and aren't dying as much as those who are not. So that's really the information that we have and that we can share. If that information changes, well, we will be able to share. And again, as I said, from the science perspective, we are not in the game of hiding things or trying to. That's why even when things were at their most difficult, we were able to say a specific vaccine didn't work for the beta virus. And many people were saying, oh, but why didn't you just let people get vaccinated? No, we couldn't. We have to provide the information. So far, we are not aware of people that are dying en masse because after the vaccination. So we found that the death and the hospitalization for those that are vaccinated is very low. And we're hoping that it continues like that. Things might change, we don't know, but so far, vaccination is still the solution in terms of reducing death and hospitalization. The issue around capacity development for vaccine manufacturing, that is really what we are doing now through our programs, including through the mRNA Vaccine Technology Hub. Now, this is a very specialized area, very specialized area. And this is why, even touching on one of the questions that was raised around the IP, you can give a person IP today to manufacture vaccines, and it can take them forever or never to be able to manufacture the vaccine. It is a very complex situation. So that's why you also need what we call technology transfer. And technology transfer means that you avail whatever IP that is in existence. And in fact, for vaccines, the IP is not the strongest thing. The strongest thing is the know-how. That's why you have to get people to come in and help in the establishment of facilities. I give an example of the tech transfer that we had with Pfizer at BioVac. It took about, I think it was about 3 or so years of our people from here spending time at Pfizer, or some on the one that we had with the French company, spending time in France, and the French coming to South Africa. So you might have the IP, but if you don't have that know-how and the capability, you will still not be able to manufacture the vaccine. That is why I said, when we got the rights to host the mRNA hub, we had applications from Senegal. There was applications, I understand, from, I don't know if Rwanda applied, but I think it was Nigeria or so on. But it was only South Africa that was found to have the capability that will enable us to manufacture at least, or within 18 months. The rest of the places, even with IP and everything, it couldn't be done. So that's why I'm saying it's a very complicated area. Those who might have had an opportunity to go and see the facilities at BioVac, you would have seen the caliber of people that are trained in the manufacturing facilities, how you go in, how you go out. And in some of them, even those that have got qualifications in the form of degrees, for you to be trained to go into some of these manufacturing places, you still need to go at least an intensive 6 months training to do that. So it is not an easy place where you can just say, no, we'll pick up some people and then we can just manufacture and they'll get it right. Because the facilities have to be accredited, the process has to be accredited, the product has to be accredited, and any failure of each one of them is a setback probably by a couple of months. So that's why vaccine manufacturing capacity building can actually take 5, 8, 10, or even 20 years if you really don't have those capabilities. And again, when we talk about vaccine, we also need to know that it is much more complicated than just pure chemical processes of manufacturing, say, chemical drugs. So how much are we spending on drugs? Again, I think that's a question that will probably be better answered by the Department of Health. We don't really know that. I think the buying is for all medical drugs and vaccines is done by the Department of Health. I will let Glodina fill in. I think I might have left a couple of gaps. And then after that, I can hand over, and also to be reminded if I might have missed up a couple of questions. Yes, lastly, I think the issue of IKS centers, I think that was really raised by the chairperson. And again, chairperson, if you agree, we might need to, through your guidance, come and update you on what we have been able to achieve on the IKS space in terms of the health innovation, because we separated it from this presentation. But what is exciting is that we have now started to move into clinical trials of some of the IK-based remedies that we've been working on since last year. So for me, this is a huge achievement. And we're hoping that through that process, very soon we'll be getting to have a sense of which of the remedies can actually deal with what diseases. Yeah, I think that's probably where I'm going to stop. Claudina, if you want to add, I will hand over to you.
Good day, honorable members. It was a pleasure to actually inform you of the important work that we are doing. There was a question from the Honorable Boshoff around the links with the under support. One of the important things that we're actually doing, we use a One Health approach. So that means automatically you're looking at what are the factors in the environment as well as within your agriculture sector and animals that might have an effect on human health, but similarly also how human health can then impact on that. So the whole zoonotic approach is being utilized in especially looking at vaccines and how we can actually also use then the technologies that is being developed for human health in the animal environment as well. So we work very closely with the colleagues in the agricultural sector then to see to how we can actually assist one another on that. The Honorable King asked a question about the spend on R&D for innovation. There was actually a paper that we wrote on doing an analysis of what is happening with funding for health research in South Africa. I will make it available for the Secretariat to then distribute to the members. We are doing that on a regular basis, that we analyze what are the actual money that's available for health research in South Africa. Department of Health provides the funding for the Medical Research Council for the normal activities of the Medical Research Council and also for the support then for growing your basic sciences. When you look at the innovation component, the only funding that's available is actually that provided by the Department of Science and Innovation. And unfortunately, we are at the moment limited to approximately 72 million rand per year. And as you will know, that is not sufficient at all, but this is what is available and we're very grateful for what is available. And I think we've achieved a lot with the limited funding that we've got. One of the activities we are planning for the new year is actually having a forum of all the health research funders in South Africa. That is the local funders, the philanthropic organizations, as well as your international donors, whether it is from government or from trusts and philanthropists from outside, that we're actually going to start coordinating then who is funding what projects and how we can actually build on the needs for health research in South Africa and not being determined from an outside agenda. Just sort of quickly going through that. So yeah, from my side, I just want to re-emphasize that what we've achieved in South Africa is actually really, really amazing. And when we need to, please do not hesitate to ask us for more information on any of the activities that we are doing. One of the major issues that we're also looking is when we look at what are we spending the money for health innovation, the major question that I always ask the health researchers is, will this technology assist that woman who used her last money to take a taxi to go to the clinic? Will this technology assist to give her the answers that she needs? And this is why we put a lot of emphasis on diagnostics that can work in resource poor settings, tools and that can used by nursing staff that do not have to have internet links immediately. For example, one of the systems we've developed is providing the treatment guidelines and the basic information about the essential drug list to the nursing staff and the doctors. And they download it, is available on their phones, and it's updated on a regular basis. So that is the kind of services that we want to ensure that we enable the nursing staff in rural areas to actually provide the best services to the people in that area. So thank you for listening to us. Goodbye. Over.
Thanks very much, Chairperson. I'm going to hand over for you if we have left anything. I've just indicated here that we anticipate that with the recent announcement yesterday, a whole lot of countries will be doing their own sequencing and surveillance. So I picked up that Israel has also picked up the variant in Israel after we've made an announcement.
Thank you so much, Mr. Moafe and Ms. Lutz. Honorable Makesi, is that a new hand?
Yes, it's a new hand.
Okay, you may go ahead.
Yes, I actually appreciate the response on the question that I asked regarding the human capacity. But my question really was not really on the at looking at production of the vaccine itself. I mentioned that you know, when you are doing production in a process of production, you have active ingredients and also, you know, excipients, which means that those are inactive ingredients. What is it that we are doing to make sure that, you know, at least we are part of the manufacturing using those? Because then you don't necessarily have to have very highly specialized and skilled workers who are basically, you know, producing those excipients. So I just want to find out, is there a drive within? Because that's why I brought the issue of Ireland to say that, you know, in my experience when I was working in a pharmaceutical day, like, you know, we didn't necessarily have to have the highly experienced human capacity, but is there any way that, like, you know, we can actually do that? The reason why I want to I'm asking this because I think it's another way of us basically transitioning our young people into the science environment. What are we doing to actively make sure that they do take part in that and there are opportunities, job opportunities for them? And with regard to fake news, when I asked about, you know, the skeptics, because the skeptics are also in the science fraternity, as I said, what is it that you are doing to make sure that, you know, that there is available information that is accurate, that is coming from the Department of Science and Innovation or whatever that is done throughout the world to cancel the fake news that we are seeing? I mean, you hear that, you know, as I'm saying, you hear that people, talking about people in Europe, some of them who have countries that have actually, like Israel, for instance, who have a majority of their people, I think they are talking about 90% of their population that's been vaccinated. And yet we are seeing cases of people ending up in the hospital. Is this fake news or is it accurate news? How do I, as an ordinary person, go out there and find the accurate news? Because unfortunately, I think it's something that we are not thinking about, but it's something that we are seeing on a daily basis because of the type of technology and the era that we are living in, whereby, you know, people can manufacture news and are able to spread it like wildfire. And if when they do that, it's not only that it retards our process as we are as a department, for instance, of what the work that we are doing, but also it's causing lives, because people, when they read about this fake news, they think that is actually because, you know, that you think that, you know, whatever that you're reading on WhatsApp, on Facebook, and whatever, it is accurate news. So what are we doing to dispel this kind of fake news? Is there a way that we can actually maybe look into it? I'm not saying that, you know, other countries are doing that. I'm not saying that we are not doing it, but what is it that we can do as South Africa to make sure that, like, we dispel the kind of fake news that we are seeing out there? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Makesi. Can I check if there are any other members who have follow-up questions before I hand back to the department? Okay, all right. So I think that's the only follow-up question, Mr. Moafe. And I see, Ms. Lutz, your hand's also up. So I'll first hand over to Mr. Moafe, and then you can.
Claudina, you wanna go first?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that question. I think we've overseen, we didn't address that. With regard to the building of the workforce that is needed for the pharmaceutical industry. We actually do work with the TVET colleges, and we also work with the chemical and industrial CETA for looking at what training opportunities can be made available, specifically to have to not only be dependent on your PhDs, but actually to work on that. So with the BioVac is working very closely with that. And then also the mRNA Hub is already exploring what are the possibilities then with the TVET colleges to actually train people with regard to that. With regard to making fake or addressing fake news, unfortunately, we do have the tendency that Facebook is more important than science. So once we've picked up specific trends, we actually have engaged through the Medical Research Council, the group called the African Alliance. That's a network that they started off being active within the HIV environment, but they're now active within the COVID environment. And we actually utilize then to create new messages for us to engage on the different activities and to disprove. But one of the problems that we find, if you pay too much attention on the wrong message, that message is actually being sort of what gets stuck in the minds of the people. So we actually only push the correct scientific information, but we use this group then to make sure that the terminology that is used is actually easily digestible by the public as such. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much. And I think just to follow up on the issue of how we can up our communication, I think at some point, and especially during the second wave, we had a very active program working with GCIS of communicating to the public some of the issues, especially when there was a lot of fake news around what can actually treat COVID, etc., because that was pre-vaccine time. So I thought that worked quite well in at least people not getting stuck into thinking that if I wear this or if I jump this high, then I won't get COVID and stuff like that. So that information those information sessions that we had with GCIS were quite useful. Maybe we might need to really amplify that again, where, you know, or we can have daily fact kind of sharing information to say, well, you know, you cannot get COVID through this, or you can get it through this, or vaccines don't do this. And I think that way, perhaps that kind of information, which I think to some extent they are there. I know that the health department does issue those. I don't know if it's on a weekly basis where they share some facts around COVID. And some of this has also been done in partnership with GCIS. So maybe we can really just ask for more visibility. And again, on the question of capacity building, in addition to what Claudina has highlighted in terms of looking at COVID, we also have got a program even now through the work that is being done in the hub, where, I mean, like, no, not in the hub, but some of our companies such as both BioVac and Afrigen, who are taking in a lot of either interns or University of Technology students who need to have their experience before they get their jobs, that are trained in these particular aspects of the work. So we are hoping that through the hub, the work is really to develop capacity from R&D to manufacturing of active pharmaceutical ingredients till the full product, including strengthening our own regulatory capacity. So those aspects will be taken care of. And the take is that because the mRNA Technology Tech Transfer Hub is really a springboard, it's not the end game for us. The end game is for us to have multiple manufacturing capabilities for vaccines in South Africa. And that's why we have begun to also identify what are other vaccines we can look at beyond the COVID vaccine. Now, the one thing that I also need to highlight around the whole issue around booster vaccines, we need to appreciate that. I think something, that's why a lot of things we say we don't know. This disease is still very new. So for example, we don't know how long an immunity lasts, either after you got the disease or after you got the vaccination. We know this for measles, that you get a vaccine for measles, you are set for life. We know for flu that you get a flu vaccine, probably you get another one within another 12 months, thereabout. But for this disease, we don't know yet, because that kind of time hasn't elapsed enough for us to be able to tell. That's why there's ongoing surveillance. So for example, we're always looking at when the cases come through, are we picking up people that are actually, that were infected in the previous wave who are infected now? And those are the kind of things that we're looking at. And even when people get to be hospitalized, data will be collected about whether they have been vaccinated or not, so that then it gives you a sense of what is the impact of vaccination on hospitalization. So that kind of time we don't have yet, because the vaccines globally, those who have done them the earliest are probably at their 11th month, because as I recall, I think the first vaccines were administered in December last year or January this year. So that information doesn't exist yet. And that's why we will keep looking at, is there a need for booster vaccines? And I think the cautious approach was taken in relation to the health workers, because they are more exposed than anybody else. So you probably may not want to take chances with them. So we don't know yet, and there isn't at this point in time enough data for us to be able to say for sure that if you are vaccinated, you probably need another vaccine in 5 years, or in 2 years, or in 3 months, or in 6 months. That information we don't know. But we're hoping that with time, we are getting to know better and we'll be able to communicate that. And if indeed it comes out that there's a need for booster vaccines after 6 months, that particular announcement will be made. And maybe also with time, better vaccines will probably also be coming, because the R&D around vaccines continues.
Thank you very much, Mr. Morfe, and thank you very much to Ms. Lutz as well. I think more than anything, as you know, as a collective, perhaps, in fact, we should really appreciate the great work that the Department of Science and Innovation does in terms of health innovation. I think a lot of clarity has come out in terms of the variants, firstly, and we really request that you keep us updated with regards to progress or developments in that area in particular. And I think perhaps some of the concerns that members had, maybe through the information we're able to receive from Mr. Morfe as well as Ms. Lutz, we've been able to understand a bit better. But of course, I think that from as beings who are critical, we may never get to a point where, even if a response has been given, that is what it is. We will continue to challenge what is being said, and I think going forth in the following updates we will receive from yourselves, members will be able to come back and say, oh, actually, but on this matter, can you give us further clarity? So for now, I think we just really must appreciate the clarities you've given us with regards to the variants, and please do keep us updated, as I've said. We also want to acknowledge the clarities given in relation to the manufacturing of our own vaccine. I think I'm just lifting these two matters because they are matters that yourself, Mr. Morfe, really, sort of parked on. I don't want to use the word dwelled because it could sound a bit negative, but you really brought in a lot of effort into providing that clarity, those clarities, also because these are very topical concerns in our country at the moment. So we want to appreciate that. And I think that, we must acknowledge, just from conversations one has also had with DG in other spaces with regards to understanding our progress in relation to that as a country and as a country within our broader existence of the continent. I think there is an attempt for us to make strides in that, but of course we want to see more, and we acknowledge the sensitivities that you've spoken to say we need to really have the correct people and with the necessary skills to be able to lead us in that front. Ms. Lutz, you said something that essentially spoke to your vision of the role of science and innovation, and I must be honest, it was really assuring, having you speak to what the role of science and innovation in terms of literally the lived experiences and realities, or it having a literal impact on the lived realities of women, of rural women, of women of the working class, of all women of all races in our country, and I really appreciate the sentiments you shared there. So colleagues, kindly do allow us to then conclude this part of our meeting, which I think was our only agenda item, if I'm not mistaken. Just would like to double check, but I think this was, okay, I see we have consideration of minutes and reports. All right, colleagues, if you will allow us to take a 5-minute break for us to return at 11:27, we can just take a body break, stretch, go to the restroom, etc., and we'll return to then consider the minutes and the reports. Thank you so much, Mr. Mofe, Ms. Lutz. Thank you very much to yourself as well, and continue doing the amazing work. Please keep us updated with regards to the developments in relation to the variants as well as the vaccine. And we can't wait until we make better strides in terms of strengthening our our pharmaceutical independence as a country. Thank you so much, and have a lovely morning. It's still morning, so enjoy the rest of your morning and your day.
Recording stopped.
of November. We got a briefing from the National Skills Fund, the Services SETA, on their annual reports. At the bottom of those minutes, it says, it's basically the conclusion, and the conclusion is that we note that the committee will send follow-up written questions to the services SETA. Can I suggest already, before I open for members, to also make their amendments and to make, as members, also make their amendments and propose adoption of these minutes. That can I suggest that we reword that to say she noted that the committee could possibly send follow-up written questions to the services SETA. So we were making consideration for the fact that there may be some members who feel as though their questions were not responded to adequately, and thus would want to make follow-up questions. So if need be, so she noted that the committee will send follow-up written questions if need be to the services SETA, or would consider, or something like that. All right, that's the wording change I'd like to make. Can I note the hand of Honorable Litsie?
Thank you very much, Chair. I think maybe on that one, if we remember, we gave the services SETA 15 minutes to respond, and in your concluding, you said they must respond to, because there were many questions that were raised. Almost, if you remember, there were almost 100,000 questions that members asked to the services SETA, and they did not respond to all of them. They just gave an overall feedback, and we're expecting them to respond in writing to all the questions that were asked. So I agree that the wording there must change, that we will send questions. No, they will respond to questions asked by honorable members to themselves. That is the first change I want to make. Secondly, I see on the, is it the resolution? Yeah, let me, on the, is it the resolution? Let me see. On the, on the resolution and services SETA, it says here on point 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, on bullet point 5. It says the committee considers approaching the courts to declare some of the senior managers of the entity unfit to hold office, given that they were employed without requisite qualifications for their jobs. I think, Chair, here, it was not necessarily a committee resolution. It was, I think that point is correct, but it should be put, it should be removed from the resolution and be put there by a discussion, because it was just what we're discussing about, and unfortunately we did not necessarily resolve on that. And that is one. So here I'm proposing, Chair, that we move this point, bullet point, the last bullet point, from resolution to discussion, but also give it, admit it, not only those senior managers, we equally said the boards, the board members at services SETA who may not necessarily be doing their oversight role. We might also, should also consider going to the courts to declare them insolvent to be directors and or board members of public entities if they are failing to do their oversight role. So here we are just adding, and also board members, but we're removing it from the resolution and we're putting it at the discussion phase. Thank you very much, Chair. Those are the only changes that I think should be considered. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Honorable Litsie. Honorable Mananiso.
Thank you, Chairperson. I think Honorable Litie is in order. I'm covered on the issue of moving that bulletin to discussions. And as well, one agrees that we said to the CETA they must write their responses to the members, not the other way around. And I here move and second the adoption of the minutes as a true reflection. Thank you. With amendments.
Thank you, Honorable.
Yeah, I think Honorable Chair's.
Honorable Makesi.
Oh, okay, thanks, Chair. You were stuck.
Okay, yes. Thank you, Chair. Yes, I just wanted on the issue of, yes, that Honorable Mananiso has raised with regard to the skills audit of the CETA is, I think I was under the impression that she was implying during that time, it was not the resolution is right. I think it's Honorable Litie saying that it's not a resolution, but it was, she was asking if we can actually have an audit of those the qualifications of the different members. So I don't know if it's something that has been already asked, or should she maybe send a direct question to get to that audit of the members, so that we have an understanding of, like, you know, who's really qualified or not qualified to be in that entity. So I don't know if that's how we're going to do that, or because I don't, as it was said earlier, that not all the questions were responded. So I don't know if that could also be something that we can ask and say, you know, can we be provided with the qualifications of the members in that entity? Yeah, thank you.
Chair.
Yes, Honorable.
Okay, I just, sorry, Honorable members, sincerest apologies. I got kicked out for a while. So I'm worried that I might not have heard Honorable Makesi's input thoroughly enough for, yeah. So can I, Honorable Makesi, may I kindly ask that you just repeat your input? I sincerely apologize. I was kicked out, and for purposes of resolving on these minutes, I need to have thoroughly heard what you said.
Yeah, no, I just want to find out if, I don't know if that is something that has to be added on the minutes itself. I have to say that I agree with Honorable Litie saying that it shouldn't be a resolution. But I think Honorable Manani, so what she was trying to bring in that particular case was that we need to look at the qualifications of the different members within the CETA. So I just wanted to find out, like, you know, is that what we are going to be doing? I know that, like, it's something that we can write within the minutes themselves, but is it something that we are going to pursue in the future, just maybe to see, like, you know, if CETA can respond to the question that we asked all of them, and including providing us with the qualifications of the members. Thank you, Chair. Yeah.
She was just connecting with the new device. I think she has a problem with the network.
Sorry, colleagues. Okay, what I've done now is just, yeah, as Honorable Litie is saying, is connect on a different device. I think the other one's giving us challenges, but I think I heard parts of what Honorable Makesi was saying, to say she agrees that it should be moved to discussions, if I'm not mistaken, and that we need to look into, we have to have some sort of skills audit of board members and I think senior management at CETA, which I think is covered in the minutes. I hope that is by and large what you were saying, Honorable Makesi. Can we agree on that?
Yes, I agree. Yes, I agree.
Okay, thank you so much. So colleagues in the Secretariat, we are moving the fact that we consider approaching the courts to declare some of the senior managers that bullets, which is currently under resolutions. We're moving it up into discussion, and then prioritizing, of course, the fact that we need to look into a skills audit of the board as well as the senior management at the institution. And then just on conclusions, can we word it this way so that if we would like follow up, we would like them to respond to questions they did not adequately respond to in writing. So you'll see how you make that shorter, because some of us are verbose and, then, yeah, so we would like for them to respond in writing to questions that they did not adequately respond to. And that coming out of that, if it is that members are not adequately responded to, we will write to them with our follow-up questions. Okay, so colleagues in the Secretariat will assist us in crafting that in a neater way. But given those changes, I will then note the initial adoption of the minutes from Honorable Mananiso, and then can I please note a hand that seeks to second these amendments? And well, the minutes with the amendments. I note the hand of Honorable Mahlatsi.
Chair, before.
Yes, Honorable Letsie. Apologies, Honorable Mahlatsi.
Yes, no, thanks, Chair. Chair, what I think Honorable Machesi was saying, which I think Honorable Mananiso raised in that meeting, was that on the audit, it must be for everybody, all 270 something of employees at Services CETA. Because if you remember, she was saying in the meeting, if we can hire senior managers without the requisite qualification, what about everybody else in the entity? And she can correct me if I'm wrong. So there it was not necessarily only for board and senior management. It was, she asked that the entity then develop a spreadsheet of all those who are in the employ of the institution with where the requirements as they had advertised it before, and those that they had hired, what were the requirements, what were the qualifications they had at the time they were hired. And she can correct me if I'm wrong. And I think that's what Honorable Machesi was saying, Chair. Thanks.
Okay, no, that makes a lot of sense, Honorable Letsie, and I do recall Honorable Mananiso speaking to that. I don't know if we need to check with Honorable Mananiso if she's been adequately covered, but I think we can all agree between Honorable Mananiso and Makesi that we're fine. But Honorable Mananiso, I see your mic is open, you can go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Chairperson. I'm actually covered by Honorable Letsie, and mine as well was about the emphasis that he has suggested that we must go for oversight. So that particular audit would then use when we go for oversight in that space. So we adopt these minutes with those amendments from us as colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Mananiso. Yes, colleagues from the Secretariat, I don't see us having covered our intentions to do oversight at CETA, but I do see we've covered it under NSF. Could we kindly make sure that that is added? And so if we are all in agreement, colleagues, with the standing initial adoption by Honorable Mananiso, I would then like for us to then move for the secondment of the adoption of the minutes with the amendments. Honorable Mahlatsi, can I note your hand, please?
Thank you very much, Chair, and good morning, colleagues. I stand to second the adoption of the minutes. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Honorable Mahlatsi, Honorable Mananiso, and to both Honorable Letsie and Makesi for ensuring that these minutes are indeed a true reflection of the meeting that we had on the 17th of November. Colleagues from the Secretariat, if you need any clarities from members to strengthen those minutes, please do indicate so that members can assist. All right, I would then like for us to move on to the minutes from the 19th of November, where we had a briefing from the HSRC on its annual report and its financial statements. Those minutes end with us having adopted, considered and adopted other minutes, as colleagues would see at the bottom there. Can I note hands that seek to adopt those minutes? Honorable Itie.
Without fail, we are moving without, I do not have anything to change. They were fine. I'm moving for the adoption.
Okay, thank you very much, Honorable Itie. Honorable, can I note a hand that seeks to second the adoption? Am I allowed to second? Honorable Mananisa, I see your hand.
Thank you, Chairperson. We are still within the minutes. It's a true reflection of the meeting. I second the minute. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mananiso. Colleagues, we have adopted the minutes for the 17th and the 19th of November. I think that then brings us to the end of the business of the day.
No, Chair.
Okay.
No, Chairperson.
No.
Today is not your day, Chair. We do have
it's not,
a report.
I think this Friday thing is not working for me. I think
We have B-triple.
Oh yes, sincerest apologies for that, colleagues. Can I just make sure I have it in front of me? Apologies. Just a few minutes, please, so that I can make sure I have it in front of me as well. All right, I do have it in front. I now have the budgetary review and recommendations report for the Department of Science and Innovation in front of me. That is the one we are going to adopt now. The document is 42 pages long. The document then ends with, sorry, the document is very long, so it will take a while for me to get to the bottom so that I can read out the end. The document then concludes with recommendations from the committee. The first recommendation being that the minister continues his efforts with the National Treasury to secure funding and advises against the future reduction of funds for science and innovation. The last recommendation being that the department briefs the committee on the annual report of the R&D tax incentive as soon as it's tabled to Parliament. Can I kindly note hands of colleagues that seek to make any amendments to this report? I note the hand of Honorable Itie.
Thanks, Chair. We are fine. No changes that we want to make. And if there are no changes from other members, I'll move for adoption.
Thank you very much, Honorable Itie. Honorable Mananisa, I see your hands up.
Thank you, Chairperson. As usually, our supporting staff, they are doing their work. Minutes are well captured, and I second them. Thank you.
All right, so the BRRR report for the DSI has been adopted by Honorable Itie, and the adoption of this report has been seconded by Honorable Mananiso. All right, now we'll move over to the BRRR report of DHET. Again, can I request that I be given a moment to just locate it so that I can have it in front of me? Thank you very much, Honorable Mananiso. Can I note a hand that seeks to adopt this report? I don't see a hand. Our colleagues afraid to tie themselves. Honorable Mahlati,
They do.
Your hand has gone up.
Yes, Chair. Thank you very much. Let me second the adoption of the report. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Honorable Mahlati. Colleagues, this report has thus been adopted by Honorable Mananiso and seconded by Honorable Mahlati. Without rushing for Friday to begin, I'd like to believe that this then calls for the end of this meeting. And thank you very much to all colleagues for your patience and for your contributions to today's Portfolio Committee meeting. This meeting stands adjourned.
Thank you, Chair. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Recording stopped.
You are starting the weekend.
I can't use sensory rasha for Friday. Joking, just joking.
Speaking like that. It's difficult to speak Setswana.
Kgetsahalang, ke a leka, ke a zama hao. Bye, comrades.
Bye.
Bye, Chair.